Prologue. Bismarck turns 150 years old on May 14, 2022. 150 years since George Sweet first secured land on behalf of Northern Pacific Railway to establish a town in support of its Northern Transcontinental Railroad. In that time, Bismarck, or Edmonton as it was originally called, has grown from an isolated frontier town on the edge of civilization to a pivotal city. Metropolis is defined as the capital or chief city of a given region. Bismarck certainly qualifies as that. Bismarck is an anomaly. It's a big city inside a small city. It stands apart with its historically big-level ideas and legends. It is a multifaceted nucleus that encompasses government, education, healthcare, agriculture, energy, and commerce. Bismarck was put on a pedestal upon formation. Many touted it as the next great city, and it had the components to realize that destiny. It is that ambitious hope that catapulted Bismarck's achievements, that consigned it as a great city. Bismarck owes its existence to the railroad, but it owes its importance to the many men and women who rendered it significant. Bismarck owes its prominence as a government center due to the efforts of Alexander Mackenzie and Alexander Hughes lobbying for Bismarck to become capital of Dakota Territory. Had Linda Slaughter not established Bismarck's first school, the city may not have the educational magnitude it does today. Had it not been for the Benedictine sisters establishing St. Alexius, the first hospital in Dakota Territory, or Doctors Quain and Ramstad founding what is today part of Sanford Health, Bismarck wouldn't have among the largest concentration of healthcare providers per capita in the Midwest. George Stark first seeded agriculture, still North Dakota's backbone. Entrepreneurs that created million-dollar empires like Harold Schaefer, Harley McDowell, Asa Fisher, Arthur Lucas, Edmund and Alexander Hughes, Philip Meyer, and the Wachters incubated Bismarck as an economic epicenter. Bismarck is great because of the people who made it so. Pre-1871 early history. Prior to formal organization by the United States government, the region including and surrounding what is today Bismarck-Mandan, sometimes referred to as the Missouri Valley or the Missouri River Slope region, was home to several dominant native tribes, most notably the Mandan, Hidatsa, Arikara, Sioux, and Chippewa. La Vérendrye was one of the first European explorers to the area, around 1738. The United States acquired most of the land that comprises present-day North Dakota from France in the Louisiana Purchase in 1803. Famous explorers Meriwether Lewis and William Clark camped the winter of 1804 to 1805 near present-day Washburn, located about 40 miles north of present-day Bismarck. During their stay in the region, Lewis and Clark were introduced to Sakakawea, mostly known as Sacagawea outside of North Dakota, a Shoshone woman who acted as a translator and guide. Due to their legendary roles, the trio of Lewis, Clark, and Sakakawea are celebrated figures in the region. The region remained sparsely settled through most of the 19th century. In addition to the native population, the sparse inhabitants of Dakota Territory largely consisted of fur traders. The first steamboats arrived in 1832, about the same time that David Mitchell established a trading fort in the immediate vicinity for the Upper Missouri Outfit Division of the American Fur Company, supplementing the much more significant Fort Union located upriver near present-day Williston. Dakota Territory organized. The United States formally organized Dakota Territory in 1861, originally comprising of land located in today's North Dakota, South Dakota, Idaho, Nebraska, Montana, and Wyoming. By 1868, the government had realigned the territory's boundaries to only include the present-day Dakotas. The discovery of gold in present-day Montana in 1863 brought the first mass occupancy of non-native populations, with many arriving by means of the established Missouri River steamboat lines. In contrast to the largely peaceful relations shared with the indigenous people up to this point, including during Lewis and Clark's famed expedition, violent disputes became increasingly common as pioneers asserted forced authority over the region. Two major skirmishes occurred during the summer of that year. The first, today known as the Battle of Apple Creek, occurred between July 30 to August 1 when an expedition of roughly 2,500 men led by General Henry Hastings Sibley, former governor of Minnesota, engaged with Native Americans near the present-day site of the University of Mary in retaliation for conflicts in Minnesota. Days later, a few miles northwest along the river, up to 60 people were killed during a conflict between the Dakota and prospectors carrying a reported $90,000 worth of gold. The actual number of victims varies by source, but all agree that casualties were heavy on both sides. All of the returning miners, including women and children, were killed, along with over 30 Dakota warriors. The Battle of Burnt Creek, as it is most commonly referred, caused the area of the Missouri River near present-day Pioneer Park to run red with blood. Commissioning of the Northern Pacific Railway to build the Northern Transcontinental Railroad between Minnesota and the Pacific Northwest in 1864 ultimately stimulated permanent settlement. To protect expanding interests, General Alfred H. Sully established Fort Rice on the west side of the Missouri River, roughly 12 miles north of present-day Cannonball and 30 miles southeast of present-day Bismarck. Fort Rice was named for Brigadier General James Clay Rice of Massachusetts, who was killed during the Civil War. Until its decommissioning in 1878, Fort Rice was instrumental in supporting government-sponsored expeditions and railroad development, which induced settlement and enterprising activities. It offered both defense and supplies. Isolated from civilization and subject to severe weather, early inhabitants found life difficult. 81 people died at the fort during its first year of operation. The region's first periodical newspaper, Frontier Scout, was first published from Fort Union on July 7, 1864. It ended publication on August 17, but resumed on June 15, 1865 at Fort Rice. The military established the Department of Dakota in 1866, which was responsible for all military operations across Minnesota, Dakota Territory, and Montana Territory. Headquartered in Minnesota, the Department of Dakota was instrumental in supporting railroad development. Depending on the source, either James Emmons or Joseph Dietrich was the first private citizen in what is now Bismarck. Emmons operated steamboats in the region beginning in 1865. Dietrich arrived a bit later, in 1868, but may have settled in city limits before Emmons. Dietrich is generally considered Bismarck's first resident.